Comic books are not only my favorite medium to consume superhero stories, but they're potentially my favorite storytelling medium in general. I've spent a large majority of my life reading comics, I've spent a lot of my professional life trying to sell comics, and I wouldn't even know how to read if it wasn't for comics. So needless to say, I'm pretty stoked on them. And so that enthusiasm also extends to my content creation and YouTube and Twitch. There's a huge superhero fan base on social media that I've been a part of for a long time now. And while I always say you don't need to read a single comic to be a superhero fan, I do still recommend them because comics are awesome. So I started Carrot Comic Book Club to get many of my viewers who might not normally read comics to try something new and socialize about it. August was our first month and we read All-New All-Different Avengers number 1 through 3 because it's the story that introduced Kamala Khan as an Avenger. So in today's video, I'm going to tell you what happened in the comic, I'm going to give you my thoughts on this book, and I'm going to spotlight some thoughts of other people who participated in the first Carrot Comic Book Club.
Stars and Stripes!
Hello and welcome to another Carrot Scraps video, and by another, I mean the 78th. So as I mentioned, this is the first Carrot Comic Book Club for August. Many of my viewers are fans of the Marvel's Avengers video game, which is one of the more mainstream depictions of Kamala Khan. Interestingly, her Avengers status is something that's been called into question a lot since the game came out, so I thought reading the comic that introduced her as an Avenger would be an interesting idea. Now, if you didn't read the book this August, don't worry, I'm going to be giving a quick synopsis after this disclaimer that I hope is entertaining. But I insist next time we do Carrot Comic Book Club that you try reading the book along with us. Even if you just flip through it, even if you just read one issue, even if you just read one panel. I'd just love to have more people participating next time. But of course, everyone who participated this month, I genuinely appreciate it, even if you didn't share your thoughts or even if your thoughts aren't in this video. Thank you for trying a new comic. All-New All-Different Avengers came out in 2015 and is written by Mark Waid and is illustrated by Adam Kubert. Now, there is a backup story in the first issue, but we aren't going to be going over it too much today. What I will say is that it's a short story between Nova and Kamala Khan. They have a small disagreement, and that disagreement is kind of seen in the full book. And there's a unique moment where Nova reveals his identity to Kamala Khan, and she doesn't necessarily feel comfortable with that. I think it's worth reading, and I highly recommend you check it out, but it's not something that we're going to cover in detail in this video. And that brings me to another point. Please keep in mind that I am not going to be covering everything in these comics. I want to give the general idea of the book so that way you're informed while we talk about it, but I also want you to go and read this comic for yourself. So keep in mind that you're not getting the full picture with my synopsis, but I highly recommend you read the book for yourself. And as usual, you can buy the book physically or you can read the comic in a digital format. Comixology is a really great resource, but Marvel Unlimited is one of my favorite ways to read comics. It's a cost-effective way to read thousands of Marvel books without spending that much. And as usual, hashtag not sponsored. After my synopsis, I'm going to spotlight what other people thought of the comic this month. I asked on my Twitter and Discord for short little reviews, and occasionally I would ask more specific questions, and I'm excited to showcase what other readers thought. Lastly, at the end of the video, I'll give my personal review for All-New All-Different Avengers number 1 through 3. And that's what we're doing today. So without any further ado, let's waste no more time and jump right into this. Our story starts on the Queensboro Bridge, where a car is descending off of the edge to disaster. The recently appointed Captain America Sam Wilson is luckily on the scene quickly and flies in to rescue the people within the car. After this rescue, Sam is bombarded above by fans and children. He reunites with Tony Stark, and after some shenanigans, the two pose for photo ops. Tony gives Sam a ride in his flying car, and the two discuss Sam's new identity as Captain America, and how the public is receiving the change between Steve Rogers to Sam Wilson. They continue to go over the current status quo of the Marvel Universe at the time, and reveal that Tony isn't as rich as he used to be, and that Sam and Steve are kind of on the outs. Elsewhere, within the former Avengers Tower, now acquired by a mysterious owner known as Mr. Griffin, the Chitauri villain known as Warbringer appears in a burst of fire. The mysterious owner of Avengers Tower reveals his magical abilities and attempts to make a deal with the frustrated and furious Warbringer, offering them glory as the Chitauri who would destroy the human race if he could combine the 3 ancient artifacts his species left behind years ago. Unfortunately, Spider-Man Miles Morales is discovered eavesdropping on the secret meeting of these two villains and is promptly attacked. After Miles is thrown out of the skyscraper, he is met by Captain America and Iron Man. The 3 heroes attempt to attack Warbringer after the mysterious building owner disappears, but with one attack from the alien, the 3 are dealt with. And that's the end of the first issue. The Vision arrives late to the scene to offer aid to the injured heroes. And shortly after, the owner of the building arrives to chew out these former Avengers. "This tower isn't an Avengers playground anymore, Stark. It's my private property." Mr. Griffin introduces himself in a rude but non-threatening manner, as to not reveal his identity as the villain who was making deals with Warbringer. While the heroes attempt to sort out their differences with the property owner and deal with the threat of this new villain, Nova rockets into New Jersey to stop Warbringer from stealing one of the 3 Chitauri artifacts. Kamala Khan is on the scene first, though, and attempts to stop the alien juggernaut without destroying the museum, but Nova arrives shortly after, wreaking havoc in the area. Kamala scolds the living Rocket for his careless fighting style and laments the loss of people's homes and livelihoods. The other heroes arrive shortly after and fill Nova and Kamala in on what's going on. Miss Marvel is shell-shocked to meet these former Avengers, while Nova is anxious about what will happen when the other heroes discover he is Warbringer's target. "Guys who say they're not Avengers, assemble!" Miles Morales shouts at the new team as they defend innocent civilians from Warbringer in the subway. Warbringer explains that he wants immortality in the form of recognition, and he believes he'll secure that prize after collecting the 3 Chitauri artifacts. As the heroes and Warbringer clash, Jane Foster, the active Thor at the time, arrives to attack the alien foe, but her attack misses due to the secret aid of Mr. Griffin. Her hammer avoids Warbringer and destroys the wall behind him, causing a flood of water to rush towards the heroes. And that is the end of issue number 2. Nova is woken from a dream where his new heroic allies are attacking him after finding out his connection to Warbringer. But when he awakes, he discovers that Thor was performing CPR on him. The heroes momentarily bicker amongst each other before deciding the younger superheroes and the civilians would be much safer if they all stay together. And so, against the initial wishes of Tony Stark, the young superheroes join with everyone else, and they move quickly to stop Warbringer. Elsewhere, Mr. Griffin watches as Warbringer discovers the final Chitauri artifact and attempts to assemble them together. As the artifacts draw close, a golden window opens above the city, revealing an army of strange Chitauri that Warbringer does not recognize. With that revelation, Mr. Griffin attempts to clear things up, while also hinting at his true intentions in aiding the Chitauri warrior. But Griffin disappears before the heroes arrive to battle Warbringer. During the battle, the heroes appear to have the advantage on Warbringer at first, but quickly begin losing their footing on victory. Below, Iron Man instructs Spider-Man to assemble the artifacts that would release the Chitauri on his word, but to destruct the assembled artifact immediately after. Chaos ensues as Mr. Griffin secretly rises the dead, who attacks Spider-Man to stop him from aiding his allies. As the team struggles, their opportunity arrives. Nova rockets into Warbringer, Iron Man gives the word, Spider-Man opens the portal long enough for Warbringer to be knocked inside, and destroy it just as quickly, trapping all threats within. And though the team is unaware of the secret threat of Mr. Griffin, the day is saved. The heroes reunite on the ground, and Iron Man makes the suggestion that since there's no active Avengers team, that they should take that position. "We have no funds, we have no equipment, and at any time Ultron or Kang or somebody could come gunning for us. With that said, who wants to join me as an Avenger?" The new Avengers gleefully accept this offer, and a new team is born. Elsewhere, Warbringer meets a grisly fate through the portal opened by the artifact, and he learns the hard way that Mr. Griffin wasn't truthful about the stories he told. Our story concludes with Nova thanking Vision, who had earlier came to his defense to protect Sam's secret of knowing his connection to Warbringer. But Sam is startled to find Vision did not do this out of the kindness of his heart, but with repayment in mind. I'm being blackmailed? By an Avenger? And that's the end of issue number 3, and the first arc of All-New All-Different Avengers. Alright, let's tone things down a little bit. We're gonna get a little less serious. The chill vibes only in the area. Wait, let me, Kyle!
Yeah, what?
Chill vibes only, okay?
I mean, I was...
Thank you, buddy.
I mean, sure, whatever.
Alright, yeah. We got chill vibes only now. What'd you think of the little reenactment? I hope you enjoyed the voices. I don't know what I was doing for my Miles Morales voice. I was trying to channel youth. I hope it sounded youthful. I gave that rasp. I'm like, I'm Miles Morales. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed the reenactment. Now we're going to get into the thoughts of some of the other people who read the book with us this month. And like I said, I put out multiple posts throughout the month on Twitter and on Discord, and we're just going to go through them really quickly. Nice and relaxed. So our first little review comes from Bravo on the carrotscraps Discord, and they write, "The art is fine, and Wade included a surprisingly small amount of cutesy pie humor in this arc. Alex Ross's covers belong in the Smithsonian, the team roster is impressive, and I like a good team book. You get to see every member do something really cool. My only major complaint is that the arc seems incredibly short. Issue 3 is 18 story pages, none of which are particularly dialogue heavy. The end of the arc was almost jarring when it hit me. A few more pages in each issue, or another issue or two in the arc, would have given more time to focus on Nova and Kamala, who were the highlight of the arc for me, and something I never thought I'd type in my entire life." And they give some additional thoughts after that, but the one I want to focus on really quickly is that they say stretching is still the grossest superpower to illustrate. And I'm really curious how you feel about this. Let me know in the comments below how you feel about stretching as a superpower. I personally think it's cool. I don't really mind it as much as other people seem to, but it seems like there's a lot of readers and fans who just aren't into stretching as a superpower for one reason or the other. A lot of people think it's impossible for you to be cool and stretch at the same time, and a lot of others just think it's weird and gross. So let me know what you think in the comments below. And this next short review comes from InXFan on the Discord. "The villain definitely was planned and to be felt like a throwaway, which I appreciate because of the fast pace of these issues, and that the first story served the purpose to introduce the reader to the heroes and how they got together as a group. Having them fight a threat unprepared felt more organic than them just deciding to be Avengers. With all of that, the fast pace makes sense whether the reader likes it or not. I like the dynamic between the new blood and the veterans, which was a refreshing contrast. It also started to plant the seeds of what was to come with the disillusionment of the young members and how they would go on from the champions. And like I said, at the end of the month, I asked a couple of specific questions about the comic to people who read the book, and this was one of those questions. Based on these 3 issues, would you continue reading this series? InXFan on Discord said, "I actually did a while ago. Not sure when, but I dropped it at some point because I barely had time to read. But I dropped everything back then, had nothing to do with the book's quality." And then over on Twitter, Bravo again says, "It'd be pretty far down the list, but sure." And those are some thoughts from just a couple of people who read the book this month. Like I keep saying, I really appreciate the people who decided to participate, even if you didn't share your thoughts on the Discord or on Twitter, but especially those who did. We'll get into my thoughts in a little bit, but from what I saw, I was honestly surprised that people liked the book so much. I liked the book as well, but I just wasn't expecting such a positive response. I think if I had to identify a common thread between the 2 reviews that I read, it's that this book has a very simple, down-to-earth superhero struggle. More so than a lot of other comics at the time, it felt very uncomplicated. It was mostly a story of good versus bad, and who's gonna punch the other one faster. And while some might criticize that, I think there's a large community of people who really enjoy that, and I think there's time for everyone to read a story like it. It's just cool to see these superheroes do the right thing because it's either their job or because they feel it's the right thing to do. Excluding Nova, most of the story is about characters who don't have a personal grudge against the villain. And speaking personally as somebody who reads a lot of comic books, that's weirdly rare these days. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's save that for the next section. So let's move on and talk about my thoughts on All-New All-Different Avengers number 1 through 3. I forgot that we did 3. Number 1 through 3. All right, we're changing speeds again. I don't know if this is more or less chill, but this is a whole other vibe now, because it's my turn to review the comic. If you don't mind, if that's okay with you. So overall, I thought it was a fun comic. I have to admit, I wasn't a huge fan of the artwork. It wasn't bad, I actually appreciate how relaxed it felt, but I wasn't always a fan of the proportions and facial expressions. Although I will also admit that this might be a problem more with the coloring than the pencils themselves. And for those of you who don't know, people's pencils change completely when they're inked or colored by different artists. And artists and inkers definitely deserve way more credit than they get. I apologize if I don't give enough credit to them, but I have favorite colorists in the industry, and you should too. As for the story, it was nice and it was simple. A good, straightforward conflict with hints of mystery for the future, which I think is the right way to go at the start of a brand new team book. I also like more complicated, convoluted stories like Jonathan Hickman comics, but I think there's a time and place for everything. If you're always reading Jonathan Hickman style comics, you're gonna get exhausted eventually. And so this kind of comic that just focuses on the good and bad of superheroes and their powers, I really appreciate that. But with that being said, the main focus of the comic was less on plot and more on character interactions. reasons. For me, classic Avengers stories and team superhero comics that work well are ones that focus on internal character drama, so I'm glad this book decided to do that. I especially loved a lot of the conflict surrounding Nova. Him being anxious about telling the Avengers that Warbringer is looking for him, combined with his interactions with Kamala Khan, are some of the highlights of the book for me. One of my only cons for the book is that a lot of the characters didn't feel like themselves at times. Every now and again, I felt myself questioning the way a particular character would express themselves. I think the best way to put it is that at multiple moments throughout the book, certain characters felt like archetypes of themselves instead of more faithful representations of the characters they were representing. I used representation twice. I'm sorry. I'm trying not to use the same word twice in a sentence. See, I criticize a comic, but I gotta criticize myself. You point a finger out, you get at least 3 fingers pointing back at you, right? Now, that's not a bad thing necessarily. It makes sense. You know, you have a team book, you can't give the same amount of depth to every single character. When you're juggling that many characters, you kind of have to pick like 3 or 4 to give the most attention to. And I feel like this story focused the most on Nova and Sam Wilson. But the archetypal nature of some of the other characters was something that did stand out to me, especially for Tony, Kamala, and especially Miles Morales. Tony kind of just felt like a quip machine, Kamala didn't really resemble the character that I recognized from her solo title, and Miles Morales didn't feel like Miles at all. Like, for me personally, there was nothing really identifiable for him as Miles. Although, to be fair, even though I don't think that Miles was written well, he still had things to do, unlike Thor. But again, I understand they can't give 100% attention to every single character. I just thought it was worth noting. Also, on a somewhat unrelated note, issue number 3 starts with Nova being beat up by all the Avengers, and it turns out that it's just like a dream that he's having while he drowned. But I just thought it was funny because that little sequence is used as the cover image for the issue, and I feel like that's a little misleading for readers. Like, sure, that event happens in the book, but it doesn't take up a lot of screen time, and it definitely doesn't happen the way it's implied. I don't know, I just thought it was funny. But again, overall, I thought the book was really fun. It felt like a very straightforward good guys versus bad guys conflict, which is something that I think you need to diversify your reading when it comes to reading multiple comic books. And then there's just a sprinkle of really good character drama, which I personally think is essential for a good superhero team comic. In the end, putting aside my praises and criticisms, it's crazy how influential this comic has been on other media. After all, it's entirely possible that without this book, the Marvel's Avengers video game wouldn't be what it is today. Sure, a lot of the plot points in this comic haven't really been seen in other media, but this is where Kamala started as an Avenger, and that makes it an extremely significant book, and that is why I chose it for the first month of Carrot Comic Book Club. And so with my review out of the way, that's the end of the very first month of the club. If you participated, I really appreciate you reading along and sharing your opinion on reading something new. If you didn't and still watched the video, thanks for checking it out. I hope the video was entertaining, even if you didn't read the source material. And again, I highly recommend you pick up the book that we did this month, or you can join us next time we do Carrot Comic Book Club. Now, I'm not sure when or if we'll do another Carrot Comic Book Club. This was a little bit of an experiment, if I'm being honest. It takes a bit of work on my part to put this together, and as much as I love it, I'm definitely going to be really busy in the next couple of months, so it might be difficult for me to do. But keep an eye on my social media channels to stay notified of when or if we do this again, and you might get to choose the next book we read for Carrot Comic Book Club. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. If for some reason you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and to subscribe to my channel for more. As longtime viewers know, I make a variety of content on the channel, and I'm always going to make the kind of videos that I want to make, but if you see something you like, make sure to let me know, and I'll try to prioritize that kind of content in the future. If you want to watch me play Marvel's Avengers or other video games live, you can check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/carrotscraps, and all my other social media, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, are at carrotscraps as well. So I want to thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. All right, so there's a point in the comic where essentially Miles is like eavesdropping on Warbringer and Mr. Griffin. He's like revealed to be spying on them, and he's using his kind of cloaking ability. That's, you know, that's kind of his thing, along with the Venom Blast. And it just made me like, there was something inherently funny about it where these two felt like they were having a private moment, and then it just suddenly Miles Morales is in the corner of the room. And I was just thinking to myself, like, how often does Miles do that? How many Marvel heroes and villains do you think Miles is just like watching that we know of? I have a fan theory about Miles Morales that he is privy to a lot of very private information, and if you think there's a secret in the Marvel universe, I don't think I think he's gunning for the next Watcher position.